The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Back here on Lewis Live, who is a great pleasure to have on with us, Benjamin Big Ben Block, just before the break. But right now, we're going to the phones, and we're going to bring on with us, we're glad to bring on to the show our NHL insider and a columnist for the hockey think tank e-newsletter, The Fischler Report, Daniel Friedman. Daniel, how are you?
I'm good.
So, Dan, we're hearing different things regarding this NHL realignment. What have you heard in New York?
I've heard really just a lot of disappointment with it from Rangers and Islanders. I don't think this does them a very good service. What the NHL was trying to do here was, I think, very much they're trying to get each team to put each team in every building at least once a year, and I think that from a marketing standpoint, I do think that helps the NHL. But I think for some of the smaller market teams, especially the Islanders, and I would say some of the less talented teams right now, because you have to state that the Rangers are not exactly the most talented team in the Atlantic Division, it puts them at a bit of a disadvantage, because the way the new system works is there's 4 different conferences, and the Islanders and Rangers are in the same conference with 5 other teams, and only 4 teams from each conference make the playoffs. So it's very difficult, especially when you're in a conference with Pittsburgh, Washington, Philadelphia, with very talented teams. It's very difficult to crack in the top 4. So a lot of people are very disappointed with this. They did get a majority in the vote in the Board of Governors, but from what I've heard, there were general managers and owners that were not on board with this.
Now, 2 things. Well, first of all, is there any possibility that this proposed realignment will not occur?
I think and it's a small chance, if the NHLPA really has a huge issue with it, that they make some noise about it, that it might, slow the process, and they might have to change some things. I don't expect it to happen. I don't think the NHLPA, it's more of a formality at this point, and I don't think the NHLPA has much of an issue with it from what I'm hearing. Now,
wouldn't it have just been easier for the NHL hierarchy and the owners and whoever it was that proposed this realignment that we have right now, wouldn't it have just been easier to move Detroit or Columbus to the Southeast Division and Winnipeg to the Central Division than to have a whole new format?
I think it would have been, but I don't think they were looking for the easy way out here. I think they were really trying to engineer a new solution that would help them business-wise and satisfy some of the unhappy owners that they had. Like, for example, you brought up Detroit, the owner, Mike Ilitch, had been wanting to move to Eastern Conference for a long time. So, but there were plenty of teams. That's nice, but there were plenty of teams in the East that weren't exactly happy about Detroit potentially coming into the Eastern Conference. I think there would have been a lot of more issues with that, believe it or not. And I think they found that the best way was to just get everyone together and say, all right, let's try and compromise between all 30 teams and let's see what works best.
The things you do
I think that's what they did here. I'm not sure that what they came away with was the right thing, but I guess we'll have to see how that plays out.
Right. No, it's very interesting to see what the NHL will do to accommodate one really, really big team, and that being Detroit. Now, what are the pros and cons, or rather, what are just the pros of the 4-conference realignment that is out there right now?
So the pros are definitely that each team is going to be able to see each other at least once a year in their own building. Each team is going to have a home and away with every other team in the league. So from a marketing standpoint, again, every team will be able to say that they're playing against, so that they'll be able to bring Ovechkin into their building, bring Crosby into their building, especially for some of those Western Conference teams that don't necessarily always see Washington and Pittsburgh, or some of the Eastern teams that don't see the Western stars that aren't marketed as much. Like Ryan Getzlaf for the Anaheim Ducks, or even some of these young guys in the Edmonton Oilers like Taylor Hall and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Now every team is going to see them at least twice a year, and at least once in their own building. So I think that, especially for these Western teams, they're going to get these stars are going to get a lot more exposure. So I think that's definitely a pro of the system. I think a con is, again, for some smaller market teams like the Islanders, who are now, stuck in a division, in a conference, I should say now, that they may very well never be able to break into the playoffs now. When you're up against, a division, a conference that has the Rangers, the Flyers, the Penguins, the Capitals, and only 4 teams are going to make it, you have to think that more often than not, those are the 4 teams that are going to make it. So for a team like that, for a team like Nashville, for these small market teams, I think it weakens them a little bit, because now that your odds of making the playoffs are even slimmer and it's harder for you to compete as it is, I think that doesn't do them any good. I would say those are the major pros and cons. I think also, but I think another pro would be that, in terms of how the playoffs are going to work, I think you're going to see more, these rivalries like Rangers Islanders, like possibly Rangers Devils, Penguins Capitals. I think you could see these with more regularity, the way that the playoffs are now formatted with the first round. I think you'll see more of these rivalry matchups.
It almost seemed as if the NHL went through painstaking lengths to make sure that the different rivalries that have grown and prospered throughout the years maintain themselves as per the divisions of where the teams and the conferences rather of where the teams find themselves now. But speaking about the Islanders, there's a lot that is going wrong in Long Island as we speak with regards to the team, and it was announced a few hours ago with Andy McDonald being out for a couple weeks with an injury. It's definitely not going to help matters out in Long Island. What is what's Capuano to do in order to fix the season and to turn things around after the second half of last season when he came in? Happy Jack seemed to be in a very good direction until this year started.
Well, I think you have to start with the defense. I think that's been the biggest problem for the Islanders this year. They've been giving up way too many goals. They're not playing well positionally. They're not communicating out there, and I honestly just don't think they have the right personnel. I think that they need to make a trade or a shakeup of some sort, and I think that's where the problems stem from, because when you're spending too much time in your own zone, you can't get anything going on offense, and you can't generate anything when you're hemmed in like that. And I think that's where their big issues have happened this year. I think now they've been getting on a little bit of a roll. They have the goaltender, Al Montoya, who's been just fantastic for them lately, and I think that's helped out a lot. It's given them a lot more confidence. But I think long-term, you can't think that he's going to steal every game, and I think that Jack Capuano has to – I'm not sure if it's something Jack Capuano could do. This is on Garth Snow, really, to make a trade to bolster that blue line.
Now, with regards to the end of the season, whether or not the Islanders make the playoffs, it will seem as if Jack Capuano will be given at least one more year to stay in Long Island to be the coach of the New York Islanders, rather. But we know that there have already been some coaching changes. Bruce Boudreau went from the Capitals. 3-4 days later, he winds up in Anaheim as the new coach. Kirk Muller takes over in Carolina for the Hurricanes. Who do you see as coaches still on the hot seat that may be gone before the season comes to a close?
I think you have to start right away. You have to look at Columbus with Scott Arniel. I think the way things have gone in Columbus this year, especially they brought in Jeff Carter and James Wisniewski. They were expecting this to be a breakout year for that team. And, you look at them, and they're at the bottom of the pack. And Scott Arniel's job has to be on the hot seat right now. That club has just not performed. I think you also have to look. As much as you said Jack Capuano, he probably might be there for another year. I think there is a reasonable chance that he is gone before the season's over if the Islanders turn things around. I wholeheartedly believe that. I believe Brent Sutter in Calgary is another name to look at. The Flames have not exactly been very good this season, and that's a whole lot lately in the last couple of seasons, and perhaps maybe it's time for a change there.
Well, we do know that Jay Feaster, the GM in Calgary, did not bring Sutter in, so it definitely will not be a surprise nor a shock if he is gone before the end of the season. But talking about changes that had happened over the course of last season, and now you have teams that we had no idea that would be in the positions that they are. You have Florida, Minnesota, and the Dallas Stars, just to name a few, who are leading their respective divisions and are on top of their respective conferences. Of those three teams, who do you see as a team that most likely will make the playoffs?
I see the Florida Panthers as a team that's going to break through out of those three. I just think they're the most balanced of the three. And they're getting scoring all throughout their lineups, particularly with Stephen Weiss, Chris Versteegen, and Thomas Fleischman, who have been excellent for them this season. They both are average. They're all three are averaging more than a point per game right now. They're getting production from the blue line as well. Brian Campbell has totally found his game again. Now he's been traded from Chicago. He has 23 points this season, and a couple of nice young surprises in Jason Garrison and Dmitry Kulikov, who have both contributed also. They're also very disciplined. They've been shorthanded just 75 times this season, which is the second most in the NHL. And they're clicking on the power play. They have one of the best top power plays in the NHL right now. And they're also, I think, important. They're getting quality goaltending. I mean, when we looked at this team this year after they lost Thomas Vilkun in the summer, we didn't necessarily know what to expect from Jose Theodore. Well, he's found his game, and he's 10-5-3. He has a 228 goals against average, and he's keeping them in hockey games. And when you have a goaltender that keeps you in hockey games, there's a good chance for you to be competitive. Why I think the Stars and the Wild are just not going to stick where they are. The Wild, I just think it's just too good to be true. There's just not enough depth on that team. They're getting a lot of. I think the biggest thing is they're getting really good goaltending right now with Nicholas Backstrom and Josh Harding. Both have stepped up when they've needed to. But their stars, there are a couple of things I look at, particularly with the Wild. Their stars are not coming through. Danny Healy and Devin Setaguchi, the two snipers they brought in this summer from trade, are not necessarily producing. Healy struggles. He has only 8 goals this season. And they're not getting a lot of production they're getting some production from their secondary scoring, which has helped them out a little bit. But I don't think they're getting enough throughout the entire lineup, and like I said, particularly with their star players. I don't think they have the personnel to keep us going. I don't see it, and I just think that there are teams that are better than the Wild are that are not in the playoff picture right now, which I think is factored in for sure. And regarding the Dallas Stars, I mean, you have to remember they're in first place right now, but they're also just 3 points out of fourth place in the Pacific Division. They all felt they were getting very good goaltending from Kari Lettman until he just went down with an injury. They're definitely getting some scoring throughout their lineup. They're definitely getting balanced scoring from guys like Jamie Benn and Louis Erickson and Michael Barrow, and newcomer Eric Nystrom, who has had 10 goals in 21 games this season. He's been a nice story. And of course, the big story there is Sheldon Surrey, who has come back from the depths of the AHL. He has 13 points this season, but again, I just don't see that I don't think that they have enough talent on that team to stack up with teams like Nashville and San Jose that are on the outside looking in right now. I don't believe that those teams aren't going to finish in the playoffs. And when they come in, someone's got to go out. And I don't see Dallas sticking around in the top 8.
Well, with Dallas, I would be remiss not to agree with you. Yes, there have been getting very balanced goal scoring from their entire club, but how long can the good, heartfelt story keep going? But I must say that in Minnesota, as for the reasons why you gave, the Wild likely won't make the playoffs, I would argue and say perhaps that's exactly why they will, because if they're doing all of what they're doing now without their top snipers really finding the back of the net, then what happens when they start to find their scoring touch?
I still don't think it'll be enough. I just don't. Outside of Mikko Koivu, Danny Healy, and Devin Setaguchi, you're just looking down the line. There aren't enough players who can step up. You're looking at players like Kyle Brodziak, Pierre-Marc Bouchard, and Cal Clutterbuck. And these guys are just not going to get it done as much. They're not going to produce as much offense as the Wild need to. And also, even now, I would say that they're not a very good team. They're middle of the even without the puck. They're very middle of the pack. They're 11th ranked on the penalty kill, and they're keeping pucks out. But I really think it all stems with their goaltending right now. And you think even with Heatley producing, I just don't see that as being enough. You need to have a lot more depth than that. And it's not just the offense. On defense, they're very thin as well. It stems more than just goal scoring. And I don't think that Nicholas Backstrom is going to, like I said, I don't think Nicholas Backstrom is going to steal 82 games, all the games this season. He's going to steal them enough wins to make the playoffs.
Now, we do know that it just takes a nice, good hot streak, and you never know where a team could go with that. And speaking about hot streaks, the Bruins, the Boston Bruins, who after the first few games of the season, we got phone calls in here about people questioning whether they had or were having a cup hangover. The month of November, they went undefeated with a 12-0-1 record and have since, in the month of December, won the first 2 games that they played. Do you see the Bruins' dominance like they've been playing over the last 15 games? Do you see that continuing for the rest of the season?
Absolutely, no question about it. The way they've been playing, I mean, there's just no stopping them, and that's what we should have expected for them, all along. They struggled early, and I think they were just struggling to find their game. But now that they found it, I mean, there's no stopping the way they're playing. It's not they're getting lucky bounces or anything. This is just you're seeing the pure skill of the Boston Bruins, and you're seeing players like Tyler Seguin, who played lesser roles last season. You're seeing those players step up, and you're seeing a lot of bounce. The reason why the Boston Bruins are so good is not necessarily because they have a ton of stars on their team. I mean, they have Tim Thomas and Zdeno Chara, but that's just exactly it. They have so many players who are just very solid all around, like Patrice Bergeron and Milan Lucic and Brad Marchand. There aren't a lot of weak, and David Krejci. There aren't a lot of weak points on this team, and they're getting production all throughout their lineup, and they're playing well, just as well without the puck as they are with it. And of course, when you're doing that, of course, it can't hurt to have a Vezina candidate in Tim Thomas and a Norris candidate in Zdeno Chara. So and the way they're playing right now, I just don't think there's any slowing them down. They're far and away, I think, the best team in hockey right now.
Daniel, Ari Lewis, thank you again so much for being on Israel Sports Radio. It's a pleasure to have an NHL insider. I am from the great city of Phoenix, Arizona, so certainly want to talk about my Coyotes.
Convince yourself it's great.
Yes, well, it certainly is the fifth biggest city in the country, and very happy I'm from there. And was born there, and there are certain issues about the Coyotes. We hear certain rumors. Some say it's done in about a month. Some say they're going to figure out a way to make it work. We hear rumors they're going to Quebec City. What is the status at this point of the Phoenix Coyotes? Dan, are you there? Okie dokie. These things happen. Actually, same thing happened with Yuri Foreman, and we got disconnected 3 times. We're going to finish this interview, gosh darn it. We'll take a break and be back with Daniel Friedman, our NHL insider. You're listening to Lewis Live on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
You're already using a credit card every day. Why not feel good every time you make a purchase? When using the HAS Advantage Support Israel Visa card, a percentage of each purchase you make will be donated to your choice of 24 Israeli-based charities, while still earning a reward point for every dollar spent. But wait, these rewards are even better than the standard rewards you get, especially when using them towards Israel travel, with the best conversion rate on El Al's Matmeed Frequent Flyer program. Earn double points at some of your favorite supermarkets and restaurants in the U.S., as well as discounts all over Israel. If you love traveling and supporting Israel, HAS Advantage is the card for you. Just give us a call toll-free at 1-866-6-ISRAEL. Sign up right now with the code ISR10 to earn 2,500 bonus points. That's 1-866-647-7235. HAS Advantage. Earn rewards. Support Israel. Offer valid for U.S. citizens only. Terms and conditions do apply. When dialing from within Israel, please dial 1-800-200-818.
See, what happens is when you talk a New Yorker or with a New Yorker about Phoenix or Phoenix hockey, they get kind of scared, and that's what happened with Dan, right, Dan?
Yeah.
All right, happy to have you back on the line. So let's talk about the Coyotes. We hear certain rumors. We're here in Quebec City. We're hearing they're gone in a month. We're here they might stay if they work out a deal with the City Council of Glendale, Arizona. What is the status of the Phoenix Coyotes at this point in time?
Very much up in the air. I think in all probability they probably will move east, probably to Quebec City. But I think, you're seeing a team that's sort of in denial. I mean, I don't think that they're going to last in Phoenix much longer. And it's a shame because, it would have been nice to see them work out there. But it doesn't look like, the future doesn't look very bright for them right now.
Now, I just had to give Ari, he kind of cut me off on the last thought that we had before and had to throw in his question, of course, from Phoenix, him, and all of that, be making sure that we get it in. But when you were talking before about Florida and their turnaround, how much of that do you attribute to Dale Talon?
A lot of it. I think the moves that you have to look at the moves that he's made this summer, and I mean, a lot of those players are the guys who are contributing right now. I mean, when you look at two of those top 3 scorers right now that are at more than a point per game, Chris Versteeg and Thomas Fleischman. I mean, those were talent moves. He brought them in. He brought in Jose Theodore, who's been fantastic for them this season. He traded for Brian Campbell, who's been a revelation. So I think the major pieces, the major parts of, major reasons for their success right now, Dale Talon has brought those guys in. and I think you have to give him a lot of credit. He's stepped in there and he's turned things around in a hurry.
Hats off to the GM in Florida for what he's done, turning this thing around in the Sunshine State very quickly. But now moving up the East Coast to New York, to the metro area, we know that the Philadelphia Flyers, the New York Rangers, they're getting set for a date come New Year's with this year's Winter Classic, or rather next year's Winter Classic, 2012. But what are the different talk? What do you hear in the New York area with regards to Winter Classic talk, hype of any sort where you are?
There's a lot of hype around it. People are very excited, especially Ranger fans, because unlike Flyers fans, this is the first time they're going to see their team in it. I think these fans are very excited about it, and not only because they're going to be in it, though, because this happens to be a very good season for the Rangers so far. Probably one of their best since their Cup year in '94. And likewise for the Flyers, they're playing very well this season. So not only is it going to be a fun game because of the setting, but these are two really talented teams that are playing very well right now. And it's a heated rivalry, and the fans on both sides are very excited.
Now, do you see that of being much of an NHL higher-uppers gamble that they took with the Flyers and Rangers when they announced last season that it was going to be held in Philadelphia and the team of opposition would have been the New York Rangers, or was that more of a calculated risk?
I think the NHL knew exactly what they were doing by putting the Rangers in the Winter Classic, and I think it was a long time coming. As for why they put the Flyers in for a second time, that I think was more of a risk, because anytime you put a team more than once when there's plenty of teams that are clamoring to play in this game, I think you're taking a risk, especially on the PR front. But I think it was a no-brainer to put the Rangers in this one. When you talk about big sports markets, which, let's face it, that's what this game is about. It's about showcasing big sports markets. It doesn't get any bigger than New York. And I think that the Rangers, they had to be in this game. I think that in the end of the day, this works out. Though it's a nice matchup. It's a good Atlantic Division rivalry, and it's a game that people will want to watch. So I think it will. I think it works out in the NHL's favor in the end.
Now, you mentioned with regards to marketing that it's very hot market, a big market. Obviously, it's New York, it's the Empire State, it's the Empire City, for crying out loud. Do you see the NHL, I'm not going to go so far and say that they're going to make a double-header matchup on New Year's Day around that time where you have the Winter Classic, because they want to kind of push everything towards just one matchup. But do you see the NHL, aside from the Heritage Classic, which is usually in February and takes on and usually has two Canadian teams facing each other, do you see the NHL adding another big type game with a lot of hype and build up to it, similar to what the Winter Classic has come to represent?
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, especially given, like you said, given the success of the Winter Classic and the Heritage Classic. I think you could definitely see multiple outdoor games in the coming future. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of those games is the Ranger-Islander game either. I don't think that would be the matchup, because I think only people from New York would watch that game. But I definitely think you could start seeing multiple matchups, multiple Winter Classics, if you will.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for coming on. We got to wrap things up. We certainly appreciate all the inside knowledge. It's great for our fans here in Israel to take a listen who miss hockey from North America. I'm sad to hear my Coyotes are probably on their way out, but we had a good run. They've been around since the late 90s.
Well,
so
you could just go root for the Winnipeg Jets again. It's fine.
Please, I'm not doing that. Maybe I'll work for – I might root for Quebec City, in all honesty. I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, you and Patrick Waugh can start rooting for
his name is Roy, right?
Waugh.
It's Roy, isn't it, Dan? Okay, I'm just kidding.
Just ask Jackie Chan. It's Waugh.
No, I know it's Waugh. Dan, all the best. We certainly look forward to being in touch with you in the future, and thank you so much for being on Lewis Live tonight.
No problem. Thank you.
All right.
Take care, Dan.
Have a good one.